Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to show 231 with yours truly, the hippie pastor. Hi, everybody. Peace and love. Peace and love. As you may have noticed in the title of this show, John the Baptist was beheaded, right, by King Herod. But it is of my belief that John the Baptist was not beheaded for righteousness' sake. He was beheaded for his own self-righteousness' sake. Holier than thou and condemning Pharisaical attitude. That's why he was beheaded, for his own stupidity, not for the glory of God, and not martyred as the righteous. He was a righteous, he was a righteous man of God. He was first cousin of Jesus Christ, and I'm sure a lot of good has been attributed to him, and rightly so. But on this occasion, he made a big mistake due to his self-righteousness, and he did manifest a self-righteous attitude in the past when for example, the Pharisees asked Jesus' disciples, how come John the Baptist's disciples are always fasting and Jesus' disciples are not always fasting? And Jesus responded, the children of the bride chamber cannot fast while the bridegroom is with them, but the days will come when they shall fast, when the bridegroom shall be taken away from them. So John's disciples were rather self-righteous. They were always fasting. Another thing is that John did not drink wine. That was one of the elements of his characteristics. All right? It could have tended that just because Jesus Christ did drink wine and was accused of being a wine drinker and a companion of publicans and sinners. And also Jesus Christ was always surrounded by women. John the Baptist was not. I think he was kind of a loner, kind of a, one of these religious guys that doesn't partake in the love of women, didn't partake in drinking wine, and was always fasting. So this could have given him a tendency of self-righteousness. Okay, so it's my definitely belief that he was not beheaded for the cause of righteousness. He was beheaded for the cause of his own self-righteousness and stupidity. King Herod liked John the Baptist. They were friends. But John the Baptist took it upon himself to accuse him of sleeping with his brother's wife. Now, I'm sure that his brother's, I'm sure that King Herod's sex life was his own private business. What did John have the right to get in the Herod? That's familiarity breeds contempt. That's getting a little too familiar. That's getting a little too disrespectful. I mean, a king is a king is a king. Okay, kings and presidents, they indulge in exclusive and sex, who knows what, privilege, the privilege. And so in those days, even more so, the king had, he had a sex life, had a lot of stress, had a big kingdom to rule over, and he got his stress out with sex. And if he wanted to sleep with his brother's wife, it's his problem. It was his sex life. It wasn't John the Baptist's business to go around pointing fingers about somebody's personal sex life, especially a king. Wrong move, John. You should have showed a little more respect. If you thought it was wrong, you should have held it in and kept it to yourself and let the guy find out on his own, if he's committing something wrong, especially somebody as important as the king. Now we move on to read just to show you that I'm not talking out of my ass. Here comes in Matthew chapter 14, verses 3 to 11. Matthew 14, verses 3 to 11, courtesy of the King James Version of the Bible. For Herod laid hold on John and bound him and put him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife. For John said unto him, it is not lawful for thee to have her. But when Herod's birthday was kept, the daughter of Herodias danced before them and pleased Herod. Whereupon he promised with an oath to give her whatever she would ask. And she, being before instructed of her mother, said, give me here John the Baptist's head in a charger. And the king was very sorry, nevertheless, for the oath's sake. and them which sat with him at meat, he commanded it to be given her. And he sent and beheaded John in the prison, and his head was brought in a charger and given to the damsel, and she brought it to her mother. How sad. It was sad for King Herod to do this too, because he really liked John, but John put him on the spot, okay, by getting him in trouble with his relatives. That's the problem with that, okay? And then the next one, we got Mark chapter 6. Mark chapter 6, verses 17 through 27. 10 verses there. Mark chapter 6, 17 through 27. For Herod himself had sent forth and laid hold upon John and brought him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife, for he had married her. For John had said unto Herod, It is not lawful for thee to have thy brother's wife. Therefore Herodias had a quarrel against him, and would have killed him, but she could not. For Herod feared John, knowing that he was a just man, and holy, and observed him. And when he had heard him, he did many things, and heard him glad. You see, he was on John's good side. John had King Herod on his good side until he got a little too close for cover, a little too familiar, a little too self-righteous, if you ask me. And when a convenient day was come, that Herod on his birthday made a supper to his lords, high captains and chief estates of Galilee. And when the daughter of the said Herodias came in and danced, and pleased Herod, and them that sat with him, the king said unto the damsel, Ask of me whatever thou wilt, and I will give it thee. And he sware unto her, Whatsoever thou shalt ask of me, I will give it thee, unto the half of my kingdom. And she went and said unto her mother, What shall I ask? And she said, The head of John the Baptist. And she came in straightway with haste unto the king, and asked, saying, I will that thou give me by and by in a charger the head of John the Baptist. And the king was exceeding sorry, yet for his oath's sake, and for the sakes of which sat with him, he would not reject her. And immediately the king sent an executioner, and commanded his head to be brought, and he went and beheaded him in the prison, and brought his head in a charger, and gave it to the damsel, and the damsel gave it to her mother. What a sad thing. What a sad thing for Herod, who liked John, but John put him on the spot by sticking his fingers, his nose, where he was not supposed to, in the private sex life of King Herod. Maybe John the Baptist was jealous, a little envious. He was a human being. He may have been a prophet, he may have been a preacher, he might have been a missionary, but he was a human being, and maybe he was just absolutely envious at King Herod, not only his riches, but his sex life. And so he accused him. How self-righteous and how hypocritical. Very typical of the fundamentally evangelical Christians that we have today. That's where they got that from. I love you with the love that characterizes my personality. Be safe and peace. May God bless you always. Thank you.